And now 9:31 and time for Tillamook. Today I got a surprise for you. We have another brand new guest host. Good morning, LeeAnn.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be in out of the rain. It's particularly bad out there today.
It is hailing, thundering, all kinds of things this
That's
morning.
right.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm here with Commissioner Mark Labhart, and he's going to just give us kind of an overview of some of the things that are going on at the county level this week. Mark, you want to start?
Good morning. Boy, it is kind of stormy out there. It was actually some thunder and lightning as I was driving here this morning, so heavy rain. So I missed last month, so I want to personally thank Commissioner Bartline. He filled in for me last month. I had a commitment in Salem at the legislature, so couldn't make it. So I've got a whole list of things we can chat about. So first thing is we got some really good news. The President declared Tillamook County a federal disaster. I mean, that's not good news in any per se, but it's good news in terms of reimbursement that we might get. And what that means is that there's two types of federal disasters that the president declares. One's called a public assistance disaster, and one's called individual assistance disasters. We got declared a public assistance disaster, and the individual assistance one is still yet to be determined, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But what it means to Tillamook County is, for example, our roads. County roads, we had about $8.2 million worth of damage to our county roads in that December storm, rain, landslide, flooding event. Mm-hmm. And so now we will be able to receive about 75% reimbursement to repair those road systems.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and any other public infrastructure like cities, like the city of Tillamook or Wheeler, ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, the highway damage that occurred on 101 that you drive back and forth on every day.
Right.
They'll get 75% of the cost for reimbursement from that. Now, there was damage to private property. For example, over here on Fraser Road, the private road collapsed. It's affecting the houses, sewer systems, water systems, those kind of things. We also applied for individual assistance to help them out. That has not yet been determined whether that's going to happen or not. But they haven't said no, so we're hopefully optimistic that there will be some dollars for individual assistance. And usually what they do with that, I don't want to get people's hopes up too much, usually what they do is have low-interest loans.
Okay.
There's not just grant dollars for private property. But low-interest loans could be very valuable to somebody who's looking for the opportunity to rebuild.
Right, it's something that they wouldn't probably be able to get from a traditional bank.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so that's good news. And then, the latest news, I'm sure everybody's aware about the Highway 131 sinkhole again.
Yeah.
This is a new one. This is a culvert. And this time, there's some lines, water lines, sewer lines, those kind of things that are hanging in the hole. It's got a one-lane road there. ODOT's very aware of it. It's going to take a pretty big fix to get the thing repaired. We did open up Cape Mears Loop Road, and of course that's getting worse and worse all the time. In fact, I had one person say you can barely get a car over that. But now they've got the 131 back open to one lane.
Right.
So, we haven't forgot about this. I mean, this is high on my priority list is the Cape Mears Loop Road. We're actually going to do something kind of unique, LeeAnn. We're going to LeeAnn Welch, Jeanette, and I are going to go down and visit with Kevin Greenwood. Do you remember Kevin?
Yes, I do. Last he was Port of Garibaldi
right.
general manager, and then he went to Newport.
And he was pretty instrumental in getting, there's a program called Tiger Grants. It's a large federal program that takes big, expensive projects across the nation and funds those. It's extremely competitive grant program. Well, Kevin got one for Garibaldi to do the wharf there. I mean, multi-million dollars. He just got another one for the Newport facility down there because he's the manager of Newport now, Port of Newport. So we're going to go down and have coffee with him and say, okay, Kevin.
He's the man to talk to.
Tell us what do we need to do? Because we applied for a Tiger Grant and we were not accepted for it.
Okay.
And so that's what we need to get this Cape Mears Loop Road repaired or rebuilt because we're going to actually go up around the slide and we got to get this thing done. We got to quit, we've got some federal dollars already. We've got some county dollars into it, but we still need millions more to get this thing done.
Right.
And so we're going to go down and visit with Kevin, and he's going to give us the secrets, I call them, of how to write a Tiger grant so we can get funded.
Well, that's fantastic. I know I've never, had to do this myself, but I've heard lots of people say that there are certain tricks sometimes to certain types of grants.
There's certain ways to write that, and Kevin definitely knows the tricks or whatever you want to call it, so we're going to try to do that. But I know the Oceanside residents are pretty frustrated because it just seems like every month that road, the state highway, fails, and they're back to driving the old Cape Mears Loop Road.
And the people in Cape Mears, used to be so close to Oceanside, and it's been a long time since they haven't had to go all the way around.
Right, and it's essentially emergency access road when 131 closes. So,
well, that's great news.
So, that's some of the issues going on with roads. If you haven't been out to our county parks lately, you ought to get out to Barview County Park. Been out there lately?
No, but I remember Dell talking about some of the upcoming changes. Are they in the midst?
It's pretty cool. There's 6 new cabins that are being built. They aren't done yet. They're going to be pretty soon. But we've got, if you've ever been out to Cape Lookout, they've got these little cabins that you can come in for people like me that are in their 60s that don't want to sleep on the ground anymore. They'd rather sleep on a cot, Right. Well, that's what these cabins are. And we've got 6 of them being built out at Barview right now. They're just beautiful. And they will be open this spring. And, it's going to be just like Cape Lookout. As I understand, you've got to put a reservation in like a year ahead of time to reserve their cabins because they're so popular.
That's right, and they have electricity, I think, and
electricity,
they'll have Wi-Fi at Barview. So.
Heat. They got heat, windows. You'll be out of the rain. You just bring in your sleeping bag. It's going to have little refrigerators, as I understand, and so it'll be pretty nice.
That's great. It's almost glamping.
Partial glamping.
That's right.
One of the hot button issues in the county right now is there's lots of discussion going on about a potential golf course down at the Boy Scout camp, Camp Merriweather, which is just down in South County. There is a interest from a golf course developer down at Bandon for the big course down there, courses I should say. And they are interested in a possible lease of Boy Scout property down there to get a long-term lease to build a golf course there. So quite controversial. I can tell you, though, that we have looked into it, and that property, the way it's zoned right now, a golf course is an outright permitted use.
Right.
So it's not controversial from a standpoint whether it can or can't happen, but it is an outright permitted use. And so the latest I've heard, and I haven't talked to any of the developers, so nobody's contacted me, and I don't think they've even contacted community development yet, but the latest news is they're still negotiating with the Boy Scouts in Portland to determine whether they're going to be able to lease the property or not. So once the property is leased, if they do move ahead with that, then they would have to come to the county and get a permit for that. And so,
but this sounds like that would be a fairly straightforward thing, unless they're.
We could put conditions on it. It could be a conditional use that says, certain kinds of fertilizers and drainage systems and those kind of things to protect the streams and those kind of things. But the controversy about whether, I don't want the golf course there, or I do want the golf course there, that question's already been answered. It is a permitted outright use.
And it's private property, too. It's not a public entity, so
that's correct.
That changes that. Just one moment. We need to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, or rather, you'll hear from me regarding one of our sponsors, Tillamook Bay Community College. Everyone has heard of computer backup, but what exactly does that mean? How do you recover from the death of your hard drive or from a malware attack? If you are looking for some answers to these questions, Tillamook Bay Community College is offering a free community education workshop just for you. You'll learn from TBCC's own Dr. Bob Petruska about important tips on how to protect your computer system from malware attacks, as well as valuable techniques to recover from a hard drive crash. If you're a small business owner, student, senior, or one of those who stores their entire life's work on their computer, then this workshop is for you. The workshop will be held Saturday, February 20th at TBCC's main campus from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There is a $5 technology fee, and participants will receive a DVD with free software relating to disk imaging and malware detection. Space is limited, so please register ahead of time by calling 503-842-8222, extension 1310. That's 503-842-8222, extension 1310. And we're back with Tillamook County Commissioner Mark Labhart.
Okay, the next one is kind of a hot button issue in the county right now, and it's called Senate Bill 1517. 1517 couple weeks ago, I was in Salem every day working this bill. It is a bill that's supported by the Farm Bureau, the Creamery Association, Tillamook County, and the Association of Oregon Counties. So what the bill does is it creates a pilot program which authorizes Tillamook County to create a collaborative process to facilitate local input and involvement in wetland restoration projects that are cited in the county. So I'm just going to read some things here.
What does that mean?
It contains 3 primary provisions. It gives Tillamook County the option for local approved wetlands projects cited in exclusive farm use zone to ensure that the project will not impact nearby agricultural operations. I'm going to read these and then I'll come back and explain them a little bit. It allows Tillamook County to create a collaborative process that a project applicant can choose to achieve agreement regarding conditions necessary to protect neighboring agricultural operations. And 3, it allows Tillamook County to enter into a planning process involving a diverse group of stakeholders that will allow the county to more effectively plan priority areas for restoration and priority areas where maintenance of agricultural operations will be protected. And it's a 10-year pilot project. So now, what does that mean?
Right.
So, for example, right now the Nature Conservancy has come in and bought 2 farms, and they're converting those to wetlands. The issue is that that's an outright permitted use. They can come in and do that. And what we're saying is, in some cases, with one of these farms that's being converted, they're opening up the drainage system and allowing the area to flood. Well, that's fine. That creates a wetlands, which we all support. But the problem is it's negatively affecting the adjacent farm, and it's beginning to flood. The water table's rising, and that farmer has no recourse at all. And so what we're saying is when you do these projects, which we support, the farmers support them too,
right?
But you can't negatively impact an adjacent property owner, and we need, as local government, to have a say in how that happens.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do with this bill, is have a collaborative process where you can do wetland conversions, but also have the ability to say, okay, if you're going to affect that neighbor property, you have to do this. You have to build a dike, or you have to have drainage, or something like that that doesn't negatively impact that. And a classic example of where it's worked is the Oregon Solutions Southern Flow Corridor project. Mm-hmm. That is one of the largest wetland restoration projects in Oregon's history. So we're creating wetlands, but we're not negatively impacting the adjacent farmland, because we've sat down with the farmers that were the neighbors, and we're building a dike on one side and a dike on the other side that protects those farmlands, and so they can continue to farm their property, but yet gets rid of the floodwaters in North Tillamook, and does a wetland restoration project. So it's truly, a collaborative process that works, and that's what we're saying with these new wetland restoration projects. We did that through just a series of meetings called Oregon Solutions.
Right.
And because it was county-led, we said we want to involve the farmers. The county bought the property. The county did this. But when an entity like Nature Conservancy comes in and buys this property, they don't have to talk to anybody. They can just buy the property. And what we're saying is we want you to use the same kind of collaborative process that we used with the Oregon Solutions process, where the farmers can engage. And the farmers aren't saying, we don't want this. They're saying we want this. We just want it to be done right.
Yeah.
And so that's what the bill is. It'll pass out of the Senate hopefully at 10:30 this morning. Senator Johnson's carrying the bill.
Okay.
Senator Roblin's totally supportive. We've been over talking to the House members, because now it'll come over to the House. I talked to the House leadership about it. It's going to get a hearing next week. We're somewhat optimistic that it's going to pass, but as things go in the legislature, you never know until the final bell rings.
That's true. How is the Land Conservancy reacting to all this?
I can tell you that they are taking kind of a neutral position on it right now, because it's been watered down enough where they can kind of support the bill. I spent an hour and a half the other day with LeeAnn Nash from the Farm Bureau, Mark Nystrom from the Association of Oregon Counties, and myself, working with Brett Brownscombe and LeeAnn from the governor's office, their natural resource advisors, going through every detail of the bill.
Oh, okay.
And so now we have the governor's office saying that they will be neutral on the bill. The governor's office hardly ever takes a positive saying we support the bill, because then somebody tries to leverage them and say, well, if you support that bill, then we want you to support this. So they always take a neutral position.
Right.
But they met with the environmental community after our meeting, and from what I'm being told is they're going to be okay with the bill too. So we're working it really hard trying to get this through. Chad Allen's provided a lot of leadership in it. Mm-hmm. It's been an issue. LeeAnn Nash from the Farm Bureau has just been outstanding in helping to craft this bill. So hopefully we've got something that will pass muster. We know it's going to pass muster in the Senate. We hope it'll pass muster in the House, and then the governor will sign the bill. And it's got to all happen next week.
Yeah, okay, so we'll know then. Yeah.
Yep, it's got to be all tied up next week because they're winding down the legislative sessions. You know, they've only got a 35-day session. So wish us luck. Hopefully it'll work. Let's see. TLT, Transit Lodging Tax.
Yes.
Some good news there. We're up 16% over last year.
Wow.
$3.6 million or something like that. We're revamping the system a little bit because we've never done this before. We knew there was going to be some fits and spits. We knew there was going to be some learning curves. So what we're doing is we've got a small task force right now working on revamping it. So here's what's we think's going to happen with it. We're going to take there's two parts to the TLT, the Transit Lodging Tax. One is the staffing,
right?
Nan Devlin and her staff. Another is what we call promotions and promotion grants. So let's say you want to have a Birding and Blues Festival, and you want to promote that. And so you can come into the TLT and get a grant to promote that. And then that's the staffing and promotions is one part. That will be underneath the Economic Development Council. So Dan would reports to the Economic Development Council and how the promotion grants will go. And then there's the facilities side of it. The facilities is the grant program that we have through the county where you can come in and you want to build a bathroom, a rest area bathroom, or you want to it's all capital projects, structure kind of things. Right now there's like $1.3 million in grant requests for facilities. We're not going to be able to fund all those.
Right.
But that'll be underneath the county totally.
Yeah.
And so we're breaking it so that everything before kind of went through the EDC and then came back to the Board of Commissioners. So we're saying, no, let's just keep the staffing and promotions under EDC, and then the county will take over the entire facilities grants projects.
I see.
And then we have an advisory committee called the TAC. It's called the Tourism Advisory Committee. They've been very helpful in doing the heavy legwork for these projects. In other words, they do set up the criteria, they evaluate the projects, and then they'll give the board their priority list, and then we'll have to make the tough decisions on which projects get funded and not funded. So good news. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, so it sounds like the main difference now is that instead of going through the EDC and then back to you guys are basically in charge directly of the facilities portion of it.
Correct.
And the EDC, okay. That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense. We need to take another quick break to hear from another one of our sponsors. This is the Tillamook County Pioneer Museum. Have you learned about the treasure allegedly buried on Neocani Mountain? Have you heard the story of the first pilgrim who built his house inside a tree stump? What about the town built along Bay Ocean Spit that fell into the ocean? You'll learn about these stories and many more during a trip to the Tillamook County Pioneer Museum. Tillamook County's history is rich and diverse, spanning miles of coastline and rugged mountains. And while time and development have reshaped some of our identity, much of it still lives on among the museum's artifacts and the enthusiasm of the staff and volunteers for telling a good story. Another note on that is that the museum will actually be closed beginning Monday, February 22nd, and through Monday, March 7th, to replace the linoleum flooring in the Natural History Room with oak. The museum will reopen March 8th with Let's Talk, A History of Communication. And we're back with Mark Labhart.
Yeah, they do that every year. You know, they're doing like different floors.
Yeah.
They update it a little bit every year.
That's what I was starting to get that. I thought, didn't they just do something?
Yep.
Yeah,
they take a certain section of it. You know, underneath Gary and Carla's leadership and the board there.
That's great.
Yeah, they do. They're doing great.
Spiffing it up a little bit at a time. That's perfect.
Have you been out to Kiltz's Point and walked the trail?
Oh, yes.
Isn't that beautiful?
Gorgeous. And it's constantly evolving, too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, really nice spot.
Yeah.
Well, some other good news to relay to folks. We've got this thing called the Joseph Rail Riders. The Joseph Rail Riders, they were up in Joseph, Oregon, and what they do is they have these little pedal cars that sit on railroad tracks, and you pedal them, and they were going from Joseph to Enterprise and back, and they're really fun. They're little 2-seaters and 4-seaters that you can sit on. And it's like the old speeders on the train, but this one you actually sit like a bicycle. You just sit there in a chair and you pedal this thing and you just ride along and enjoy the scenery. Well, they came over to Tillamook and brought a couple of their little carts with them and gave us a little tour. We met at Bay City, and we got on the tracks and rode up to Hobsonville Point and turned around. And my wife and I went, and Michelle Bradley from the port, and Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad was there. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we were having people waving at us going down the highway, and they're stopping. How can I get on one of these things? This looks really cool, you know. So anyway, they have decided to open a business in Tillamook. And so they're building some carts, and they are going to start in Bay City. And as I understand from Shayna, and that they've been approved for a parking lot and a little site there, right there by where you go to the fish peddler there.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right at the intersection there where all the clam or oyster shells are.
Right.
That's where they're going to park. That's where they're going to set up. And they'll be there this spring. Michelle told me the other day that it's been approved, and so they're going to be in operation, and so they're going to have the rail riders. And I understand that you can go from, I hope I got this right, from Bay City north up to right there at Hobsonville Point before it crosses the highway.
Right.
And then you'll turn around and come back. It's about a half hour up and a half hour back.
Yeah.
And then from Bay City to Tillamook, it's about an hour down and an hour back. So you'll have two different things. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. I think, with all the people on 101 and, when they come to the cheese factory and then they go to the chamber and say, well, what else is there to do? Well, you can just go on these little rail rider cars and, little kids can ride on them or 90-year-olds can ride on them.
Well, and I was just thinking, I for a short time I covered news in Seaside, and they're not even remotely bothersome like the Surreys that actually go weave in and out of vehicle traffic. So that's fantastic.
Right. They'll be on the train tracks, and it'll be pretty cool.
Well, and then Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad tends to focus more on Garibaldi, Rockaway, Wheeler during the...
Correct.
It
won't be a conflict with their activities because they're not using any portion of that track.
That's great.
So, it's good news. You're going to see a lot of activities this summer in terms of the Southern Flow Corridor project. It's out for bid right now. That's the big flood control project north of Tillamook. That's a $10 million project. You're going to see 101.6, the intersection downtown Tillamook. You're already seeing a bunch of stuff going on in downtown Tillamook, but there's going to be the Marclair is going to be torn down here pretty soon, and they'll start that project this summer. You're also going to see some paving to finish the paving project on 101. I mean, you drive it every day probably. It's pretty bad from Tillamook up to about Wheeler.
Yeah.
And so that's going to get finished paving this summer. Salmonberry Trail. That project's also getting pretty exciting. We've got a governmental entity called the Salmonberry Trail Authority, and it's a pretty powerful group. We've got the Director of State Parks on it, the Director of the Department of Forestry, Washington County, Tillamook County, the port, and so we're breaking it into three sections. There'll be the section called the Coast Section for trails, and then they got the Salmonberry section, which is up in the forest, and then the bank section. So it's an 83-mile-long trail, but we're breaking it into three sections because we know we can't do it all at once.
Right.
So we're going to have a group working on each of those individual sections. So like the Tillamook coast section, the city of Tillamook's already moving out. They're really excited about this. And some of the other cities are saying, we're really interested in getting this thing going. Garibaldi's done their water line project from Garibaldi up to Barview. There's a potential there that we could build a trail right alongside that or right on top of that water line that is right adjacent to the train tracks. So that is getting pretty exciting. It's going to be a multi-generational project, but we're going to start working on it a little bit here and there.
Great.
Last thing is, we still have a few minutes left.
I think we're just going to make it.
The Pacific City Incorporation on the 23rd next week at 6:30 at the Quanda Community Center is going to be a public meeting to talk about, about incorporating this little community of Pacific City. Pacific City is becoming a city. Whether people like it or not, it is growing. And, I moved here 31 years ago, and it was kind of a sleepy little community then. Well, now, you have trouble finding a place to park on the weekends, even in the wintertime down there. And so I'm a firm believer counties do not do a good job of providing city services. We've never been set up to do that. Neighborhood issues, sidewalks, parking in front of houses. Counties don't really do those kinds of services. And so Pacific City has in the past talked about incorporation. There was a meeting there about 10 years ago. Did you cover that? Were you around then?
I wasn't. It was one of those lulls where I was covering news somewhere else, but I've heard about it. I heard about the straw poll and.
Yeah, well, I was there, and in fact, I actually talked. We had Shirley Calcoven, a small town mayor, to talk about the different services. Because when you become a city, you don't have to have a full-fledged city. You can contract things out. For example, Garibaldi contracts out their law enforcement. They contract it out to the county. Some cities don't have full-time planning departments. They contract out their planning to a planner because they don't need full-time planning. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want as far as the city goes. And so that's what the discussion is going to be on the 23rd. The League of Oregon Cities is coming down. They're expert on forming a city. I think Gary Bullard and Jerry Taylor are going to be there, the city manager and the mayor from Manzanita, to talk to them about what a small town can or can't look like, depending on what you want to do. And then I think the treasurer's going to be there, county treasurer, talk about taxes, how taxes work. And then after they're done with their presentations, they're going to ask questions. And I think they're going to try to answer every question in the room. And I think the end result of the meeting is the chamber's going to say, okay, do you want to continue the discussions at a future time about forming a city or not? And one of the issues that they, I think, want to discuss is an enhanced sheriff patrol district.
Right.
Because one of the things that people in South County have been lobbying for years is we just don't have enough sheriff protection, and we try to provide them as much as we can because there's no cities down there, so the sheriff provides all law enforcement activities in those communities. And on a July 4th weekend at the beach, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And we've got to provide as much law enforcement as we can, and sometimes it's difficult. So they're going to talk about that, too.
That would actually involve them paying for their own dedicated protection.
Yes. So we got two things going on. One is to talk about forming a city and what the costs are, pros and cons of that. And then the second issue is, well, if you don't want to form a city, what about a separate district to form around increased law enforcement where you would actually pay for additional officers to be on site in that specific district, wherever that is.
Right.
And it includes right now, they're talking to Nesquin about it too, because Nesquin's very interested in having additional protection also.
Oh.
So, let's see, what else I had a whole bunch of stuff on the list here. Emergency management, we're looking at, Gordon McCraw. We need, right now we've got earthquake and tsunami issues going on throughout the state. The state's is getting ready to hire a new, what they call a resilience officer, which is a person that's dedicated to working with counties, ports, and cities about earthquake protection and tsunami protection. Well, there's a bill in the legislature that would allocate $10 million of what they call Q bonds that would be dedicated to providing emergency preparedness equipment to local jurisdictions. So an example of that would be, let's say, let's just use the Stucca Fire District, for example. Let's say they've got one of their outlying fire stations doesn't have a generator.
Right.
And so they say, well, we just can't afford it. We've got a generator at our main station, but we can't afford to have one at that other station. And in the event of emergency, people are going to go to that outlying station, for services, and the power's out. They don't have a generator. So you could use these Q bonds to get a grant to put a generator there. Rockaway Beach is looking at putting in containers up on the hill to put supplies in, big storage containers. This Q bonds would be able to provide funding for that kind of a thing. So you could get emergency preparedness equipment stationed throughout the county in these old jurisdictions that can't afford to do these kind of things. So I testified in support of that about a week ago and got a really good hearing. They were very, very supportive. The state would release the bonds that would go to the Office of Emergency Management, and then small communities and counties could apply for those funds. So I'm sure we're going to, if it passes, which I hope it will, we'll be in line to get some of that stuff because we've got a lot of volunteers out there, but it's difficult for them to to be able to afford the equipment. And it's difficult for some of these small cities when they're just trying to get by to be able to afford this equipment. So.
Yeah, that's perfect because, like you said, there's a lot of heart out there, a lot of
Yeah.
dedication. If you could marry that to money, we'd be in good shape.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Oh, we're over.
Okay.
So we went through quite a bit of stuff. And
Yeah, we did. So I guess it's up to me to wrap this up. This is my first time. All right. Well, thanks to Commissioner Mark Labhart, and thanks for listening to Tillamook Today.